This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Imagine living the life of your dreams with a job where you get to interview the biggest stars in the world, but then realizing you're not happy. When Jonathan Troen found himself in this situation, he began his journey to figure out why. Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, how are you? I'm so happy to be here.
I'm great. So, this is a story that I've seen come up time and time again. Everybody's living their life, they're checking this list of boxes that somebody seemed to have set out for us. And while on the outside, everything looks like our life should be wonderful and perfect, and isn't it amazing? But then deep down inside, you realize, oh, something's not right.
Yeah, there's often, with so many of us, a huge disconnect between what life looks like from the outside, the masks that we put on to fit in, to entertain others, to do what we think we're supposed to be doing because that's what our parents told us, or that's what they taught us in school, or that's what all the marketing messages are telling us. You got to do this if you're going to fit in and be happy, as if fitting in makes you happy. Doesn't. And so we have this facade on the outside that doesn't match what's going on the inside. And that's really an icky feeling. And I'd go into more detail on it, but my guess is most people hearing this understand exactly what I'm talking about.
And, I always use the analogy of a 2x4, that when things like this come up in life, it starts off as a small whisper in your ear. And if you don't pay attention, it's nagging, it's a louder voice. And if you're still resisting, that's when it hits you over the head with a 2x4. And you're sort of forced to make some sort of change in your life so that you can find this happiness that we seem to be missing in our lives. Did you find that process of admitting that you were unhappy, was that hard to admit? Was there guilt around that?
Well, it was hard to understand before admitting. Was there guilt? I don't know if it was guilt or shame, which are different, around that, but there was certainly underlying shame in my life that I had to deal with, that I had put on myself. The whole idea of not being good enough.
Yes.
That no matter what, it didn't matter how successful I was. I mean, I lived 3 blocks from the beach. I could see the sun set from my window. I could have my feet in the water, walking down the street through the sand. My feet were in the water in 10 minutes, like watching the sunset. This is what I was taught, right? That's what was supposed to be success and what was supposed to make me feel good. But there was this underlying story in my head that I wasn't good enough. So therefore, it didn't matter who I interviewed. It didn't matter what I succeeded at. It didn't matter how much money was in the bank. There was an underlying story, which I had committed to memory, though I didn't know it at the time, that I wasn't good enough. And I always had to figure out, how could I be more like that person? Like, I was on a nonstop journey to be more like another person. Well, that person's more successful. Well, that person's happier from the outside. Who knows what was going on inside? It was a nonstop journey to be more like someone else. I had no idea what was happening inside this other person's head, if this other person was even real. But I knew that I had to be more than I was, and it didn't matter what stage. So when my success was, let's say, quote unquote success was here, I'd be happy when I got here, but then I got there. Well, there were people more successful, so then I had to get there. Well, and it's always, when you get the house, when you get the car, when you get the new job, when you get the whatever, then you'll be happy. I got all of it. And then I still wasn't happy. So it was really confusing to me what was going on, because I thought I had done just as I had been taught.
So when you hit that point of confusion, because you have to go through a certain, in my experience, you had to actually admit it. You may have been feeling it for a while, but then you actually have to come to the face where you admit, wait a second, what am I doing here?
Yeah, so for me it came in different stages. Everyone talks about the aha moment, and I have a zillion aha moments. I don't have the aha moment. But one came. I remember I was walking in the park overlooking the ocean, and I had my headphones on, and I was really into punk rock. That's half my life was spent at punk rock shows. And I'm listening to this song that I had heard tons of times before. It was by a band called Social Distortion, who I had interviewed. I had seen them live. I had listened to this song thousands of times, I don't know. And the line was, "You can run all your life but not go anywhere." And I stopped and going, "Oh my God, that's me." Because what we haven't heard yet was, I moved to Denmark, then I moved to Spain, then I moved to LA. I was in the middle of LA. Then I moved to Santa Monica, 11th Street, still not good enough. Then I moved to 3rd Street, where I shared with you, this amazing experience. I was just, I was running around the world, and I always thought I was running to something. What I discovered then, I stopped in my tracks. I'm going, "Oh my God, that's me. I'm not running to something. I'm running away from something. And the thing I'm running away from is me, because that's the only constant in all of these places." So that was the big, "Oh my God, oh, what am I gonna do now? Do I leave the entertainment business? It's all I know how to do. It's all I've ever done." All those kind of stories. And it was my identity, right? Our work becomes our identity. So that was the first step. So then I started. I said, "Okay, let's switch this around. Okay, I learned about the voices in my head. Okay, I'm not talking kindly to myself. Okay, so I learned confidence techniques. I was a very shy. Didn't matter what kind of success I had. I was still very not confident to myself, very shy. So I learned some confidence techniques. I learned goal setting techniques. And I learned some of these techniques to, again, new rules to live a good life. Okay, the old rules didn't work. Let me try these new ones. I went off into a new career. I started teaching yoga. I had already started practicing yoga. So I said, "Okay, well, this entertainment world isn't working for me right now. Let's try the yoga world." And then I had gotten trained as a life coach, where I learned all these things about the voices in your head, and how to bring in some of the positive voices, the inner guides, and things like that. But then, if some years later, there was another huge aha moment, but again, one of millions. So, without all of them, there's nothing. And in this one, I was I forget whether I was watching or listening, but it was a Louise Hay teaching, and she said, "Go to a mirror and say, 'I love you.'" I'm like, "Oh, that sounds cool." And I had already been doing this work for some time, right? I'm teaching yoga for years. My students are doing great. And I've been a coach for some years now. My clients are doing great. And I walk up to the mirror, and I look myself in the eyes, and I go, "Jonathan." And I have shared the story before, but that is an exact quote.
Yeah.
That's what came out of my mouth. I couldn't say it. And in that moment, I guess a lot of shame must have come up, going back to that was their guilt. I don't think it was guilt. I think it was more shame. And I'm like, what the hell? What just happened? Because if you would have asked me if I like myself, of course, I got the yoga, I'm coaching people, I got this success thing figured out. That just blew me away. That even after all this work, I still did not love myself. So that brought me on a whole new journey for redefining success, what success actually means to me anyway. Um, and then how to go about achieving it. I didn't try and say I love you to myself for about another month because it was so terrifying, but I knew I had to get back up and try. I knew I had to get back on that bicycle and see if I could start pedaling those wheels. And I did. And to be clear, it's all a work in progress. I've been doing it for a bunch of years now, and I'm way better off today than I was last year. Much better off than 10 years ago. And I suspect I will be going deeper. Talk to me next year. I'll be in a different place. It's a lifelong journey.
And that's what I found too, is that, once you call it break through that barrier and you're able to actually not just express self-love for yourself, but even acknowledge that you need to.
Hmm.
Once you sort of make it through that and you get comfortable with who you are in the moment, but then because of who you are in the moment, you grow and you expand and you step out of your comfort zone. And then all of a sudden you're faced with something new and scary, and all those old fears and the voices in your head that you keep referring to, that inner dialogue starts creeping back in with its negative talk. So then you have to go through the process again. So each time you level up, you have to keep going through it, because you have to learn to love yourself, the new self that you've just created.
Yeah. And that was a big realization for me. And that one came to me actually before I learned about self-love. It was kind of between the learning about the voices in the head and then some of the strategies about creating inner confidence and achieving your goals. And when I learned about self-love, between there, I can picture it so clearly. I was walking on the street towards my home in Santa Monica, California. And I just stopped and I realized, oh my God, this doesn't end. Because what I thought at the time
Nope.
was, okay, so I'm learning some of these tools, and once you figure them out, you got to practice, right? Like anything, there's skills, you got to practice. And once I practice it and get good at it, then I'm there. And when I discovered there was no there, I was like, it took me about a month to get over that one. I think most of my students work much more quickly than I do. It takes me a lot of time to take some of these shifts. And I remember sitting with that one just for days and days, like, this never ends. I just have to go deeper and deeper and deeper. This was before I knew about self-love and the depths that you could go to with that, and the depths of forgiveness, in the depths of all the stuff that we've covered. Like we talk about peeling off the layers of the onion. Oh my, it's an infinite onion. See, I thought you peeled off the layers and then you were at the core and then you're good to go. No, that's the trick the universe played on us. It's like that movie, The Never Ending Story. Well, it's the never ending onion. There's always
Yeah.
another layer.
There's always a new thing you learn. There's always a new challenge to tackle. There's always a new experience to learn from. And it's, I think, at least what I found is that once you grasp that part of it, once you get that part of it, and you release any notion of reaching that destination, that finish line, that goalpost, once you can toss all of that out, then it's a lot easier to go with the flow.
Yeah. So now, new things come up all the time. I'm faced with challenges every day. See, people think success means life without challenges, life without pain. No, it's completely the opposite. It actually welcomes the challenges and welcomes the pain in a more loving fashion, because the challenges and the pains, they're a given. There's no way around that. The suffering with them is a choice. So yeah, there's if we are going to learn and grow, And that's what we're here to do, to connect with people, to learn and grow. You're either learning and growing or you're dying. There's no same old, one or the other. And I grant you, it's not always a straight line. It's more like the stock market, a little up and down, up and down, up and down. But if we're going to continue to learn and grow, we're going to face these challenges. And once we understand that there's always something deeper, then we get to invite the challenges in a different way and go, oh, this feels uncomfortable. I don't like the way it feels. This is another one of those times. Okay, let me invite it in and play with it and be curious about it instead of fighting it. Be curious about it and then see what happens. You'll get on the other side of that. It'll feel really peaceful. And then it happens all over again. Maybe a month, maybe 6 months, maybe a year from now. Who knows? But it will happen again.
Do you add in a layer of excitement for the unknown in that process? Because, as you're working through challenges and opportunities, you realize that it's not necessarily a challenge or an ending. It's possibly another door opening up or something else happening. It's a chain of events. So for me, I try to look at the excitement and, what's going to come out of this one? What am I going to learn? Who am I going to meet? What's going to be that new thing that comes out of it?
Yeah. So I hear that and I agree with it. And sometimes I have the excitement, but I have to be honest with you, sometimes the excitement's not there and I have to open up to welcoming.
Oh, definitely.
So maybe I'm excited, maybe I'm not, but either way I work on the welcoming. And part of me is like, well, I should be more excited, I guess, about it, but I also have to accept where I am. So I go, okay, no, you don't have to be excited, Jonathan. If this is where you are, well, just love that. What it is for me, so when we go through these changes, it always brings fear for everyone. Anything unknown is scary, right? In the old me, when there was fear, which by the way, to your point, is for many, if they describe the sensations of fear, they're very similar to the sensations of excitement. For many of us, if you really, fear is just a word we put on sensations in our body. Excitement is a word we just put on sensations in our body. Often they're the same sensations, and depending on our perspective, we'll call it exciting or fear. Roller coasters, they terrify me. Other people, they're really
bring it on.
Exciting. I'm like,
bring it on.
This is really high up, and did I tell you before we got up here that I'm afraid of heights? But I do look for the scary now. Like I look for scary, I seek out scary. I don't hide from it. And in fact, if there's not enough scary in my life, I know something's wrong and I'm not doing anything important. I'm getting stuck in habits and patterns. So I look for the scary to force me to embrace it, maybe be excited, and if not, curious. I'd say curious is a better word for me. Curious is the word. Curious about what happens if I keep going. Because the old me would stop. Fear, no, and I'd run away, right? And go back to, the old world I know, which was, the bar or the ocean or, and these are great things. Both the bar, I'm not anti-drinking, ocean is obviously great and chemically great for the human body. But neither of those, even as beautiful as the ocean, and neither of those should be escapes for current moment experiences. So I seek out things that will scare me so that I go into my move from my comfort zone to my courage zone, knowing that the courage zone will soon be my comfort zone, right? It's always going deeper part that we were talking about, and have curiosity for how I will journey through it and what's on the other side of this line. Not the there, because there's no there.
There is no there.
But there is on the other side of this line, and I can be curious about that, what that's going to be like.
So we've talked a little bit about self-love, but what is self-love? What's your definition of self-love?
Being kind to yourself. Simply learning to be your own best friend. It doesn't mean we shouldn't have connections with others, right? In fact, a self-love practice often makes our relationships with others stronger and better. But it's having the resilience inside of you to have your own back. So if you were having a difficult day and a friend would come to you and say, or if a friend were, if a friend were having a difficult day and they would come to you and say, oh my God, this happened to me today, you would say, oh, come on in, sit down, have a drink, have a cup of tea. I got your back here and tell me what's going on. And it's all going to be okay. And I'm here for you. So we rely solely on others for this. Now, it's great if there are other people in our life to do this. We should have them. Yes. And meanwhile, while that's going on, inside of our heads, when we do something wrong, we're like, you jerk, that was so stupid. How could you do that? It's never going to be okay again. Your whole life is a mess because of it. Do you get what I'm saying, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So can we begin to talk to ourselves and say, oh, wow, yeah, that was a rough day. Oh, that was a big mistake. Not even that it wasn't. Let's assume it was, right? There's oh, it wasn't that bad. Okay. But let's say it even was a bad mistake. Okay, let's practice forgiveness. And let's have our own back. That's what self-love is about. It's having our own back. It's a process where we stop fighting with ourselves. Most of us fight with ourselves daily. We're our own worst enemy. It's a process to stop the fighting and just leading with kindness to ourselves. Be kind to our bodies, be kind to our thoughts, be kind to our mistakes, to all of it. And for people that have their own businesses, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, to be our own best boss. We're the worst entrepreneurs are the worst bosses in the world. Of course, we're our own bosses. If anyone else spoke to us like that,
fire ourselves.
we would quit that job. We would never put up with a boss like us, ever. We'd quit in a second. I don't care how much they're paying us. But
It's
yet
true.
we're mean to ourselves. So how can we be our own best friends and our own best bosses? That's self-love.
So how does self-love, how does that impact things like self-esteem and success?
So to me, self-esteem comes from the outside. Give everybody a trophy. Prove to everyone that you're good enough. Try and fit in. There's a difference between fitting in and belonging. Most of us try and fit in. And we learned it as a kid. Can't you be like those kids on the playground? Why are you always doing this? Oh, I'm supposed to be like that. Okay, let me fit into this box here. Very different than belonging. Belonging is an act of self-love. Fitting in is an act of self-loathing. And self-esteem comes from the outside. So you are going to tell me, right? Self-esteem is you at the end of this interview telling me, hey, good job, Jonathan. I really enjoyed what we spoke about, and I really learned from you today, and you were great. And then I'm going to feel good about it because you told me what a good job I did. Self-love is me looking in the mirror at the end of the day going, hey, good job, Jonathan. You showed up. You stumbled over some words, you slurred, you got some points out of order, you messed everything up, whatever it is. But you showed up and you impacted people. And one person could hear that and their life could be changed. Congratulations, Jonathan. You showed up. I love you. I got your back. Let's do it again tomorrow. That's self-love. And how does it have to do, the second part of your question, how does it have to do with success? We've been taught this equation that says work hard. If you work hard long enough, then you'll be successful. And if you're successful for long enough, then you'll be happy. And of course, that's the midlife crisis. We worked hard, we were successful, we got the VP titles, we got what we wanted. I mean, some people didn't get there, but and then that's a crisis. And many people did get there and they're not happy. Well, what's wrong? Well, because you tried to fit in. And not your fault. You did just as you were told. It is not your fault. You did everything that everyone told you to do. Now everyone's blaming you. I just did what you told me to do. I worked hard and I'm successful. You told me that I'd be happy. Okay, but I'm not. The real equation is be happy. Be happy now. If you're happy, you are successful. Because that's why you're working so hard in the first place. And when you are successful, it's easy to show up and do the hard work that you're here to do. Like some people say, well, if you're happy and already successful, you're not going to work hard. No, it's so much easier to work hard with success and love. So then the question is, what makes us happy? Well, it's not you telling me I'm doing a good job. Although, let me take it back. When you tell me I'm doing a good job, when you tell me I'm doing a good job, I then think good things about myself. When I think good things about myself, I'm happy. I have to get you out of the picture, because what happens if you're not here? What happens if you, my dear friend, all of a sudden aren't here anymore to tell me I'm doing a great job? So what really makes me happy is me telling myself that I did a good job. I have to be able to do that without you telling that to me. That's where real success comes from. If you tell me, great. If not, great. Because I have my own back. Did that make sense? Did I say that clearly?
Yeah. It's basically your self-worth isn't dependent on what anybody else says or does. It comes from yourself.
We have to begin giving it to ourselves, because people come and go, right? Even those that love us, they might come and go. And when we're reliant on others for our happiness, it's a lot of pressure to put on them. They don't want that kind of pressure. They don't want to be responsible for your happiness.
Well, I don't think anyone else can. Ultimately, nobody else can be responsible for your happiness, because happiness is a choice.
Yes. And that's not what we're teaching people, because you complete me. What is you? Right? People say it all the time, and it's the most beautiful thing to hear. You meet another person, oh, you complete me. You know, one of the biggest movie phrases of all time. But what does that mean? It means I'm not whole unless you're there with me. Well, that's not a
fun place to be.
It's not. And yet that's what we're teaching people. Find your other half. Find your better half. No, you're whole already. Find another hole and be together as a bigger hole, or two holes that come together and have fun. Two holes are better than one hole. But yeah, and so I agree with you. And it's not what we're being taught. Find your soulmate. Well, what if I am my soulmate? How about I'm my soulmate? And then I can welcome in anybody else. But I'm whole just as I am. And you are whole just as you are. And we're all already whole.
And some people would say that you can't truly love another person until you learn to love yourself. And 5 years ago, I didn't understand what that meant. It took me a little bit of time, but I definitely get it now.
Yeah. I think there's a symbiotic relationship to it. I think you certainly can love others better when you fully love yourself. 100%. And it doesn't mean you can't learn the experience of what it is. If you don't love yourself at all, sometimes you have to experience it first. So it's picture someone you do love unconditionally, maybe a child or a niece or nephew or a pet. What does that feel like? And now take some of that and put it towards you. So that's just to say, I think it can be learned both ways, right? And when you build kindness to yourself, you build kindness towards others. And if you can build kindness towards others, you can also shine that on yourself. Kindness is not people-pleasing, by the way. When I say kindness, I do not mean people-pleasing. They are two very, very, very different things.
Definitely.
So, and I want to say that because a lot of people think, well, what, I don't love myself yet. Does that mean I can't be in a relationship? Does that mean I can't love another person? And no, you can. You can love another human being. And if you want to truly love them fully with no fear, because a lot of fear comes around loving relationships. If you want to get that fear away from the loving relationship, that comes from having complete acceptance and love for yourself.
And that exercise of just taking that pause, and if you're questioning, how you're self-loving, or if you have self-love, that exercise of picturing how you love a child, an animal, or something else, by acknowledging what that feels like and then trying to reflect it back on yourself, that seems like a really good baby step towards exploring your own self-love.
Yeah. Because when we say it, like, if you don't love yourself, you can't love others. Well, that's somehow implying that you don't have love. And we all have love. So sometimes you just have to figure out, well, where is it?
What does it feel like? Yeah.
Yeah. And often we're stuck in judgment zone most of the time. So we judge ourselves nonstop. We judge every other person nonstop. And well, if they were only like that, if they would do that better, if I would only like this, if I would do this better. And we need to move from a place of judgment to a place of curiosity, a place of learning. Curiosity opens up the door to kindness. Kindness opens up the door to love. So being curious about the other person, being curious about yourself, right? When I had that realization that I share with you, oh my God, I'm running from me. I had to become really curious. Well, what am I running from? Why am I running from it? Who am I running from? Who am I? Like, who am I? Because we put all these labels on ourselves, right? At that time I wasn't a parent, but if I think of right now, so I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a parent, I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, I'm a friend, I'm a son, like we put all these labels on us, which trap ourselves,
Yeah, they
and
put us in boxes.
we put ourselves in boxes. So how can we, instead of labeling, which gives us a sense of certainty. So that's the certainty we all want in our lives. So we label it, I am. And what if we didn't put a label after that? What if we just said, I am? Like, if you're listening, just do this. Just pause for a minute and go, I am. No words after it. And just see what that feels like. Not to have to label yourself, not to have to put yourself in a box, and just be curious to feel what arises when you're out of that box. And then this is when it gets magical. Not easy, by the way, but magical. Then you can begin to open up that curiosity for others around you, especially when they piss you off. And instead of putting them in their box and labeling them and judging them, simply be curious. I wonder why they're going through this right now. And I'm the recipient of whatever, or I'm witnessing whatever. But what if I can hold a space for non-judgment? It doesn't mean you have to take something, right? I mean, boundaries are important. But what if I was just curious about, I wonder what is happening inside of their head? What's their self-talk? What's their self-worth right now? What's going on inside of them for them to be experiencing life the way they are right now? Curiosity, it leads the way.
So on this journey that you've been on this far in discovering self-love, what's been the biggest surprise for you?
Okay, here's the biggest surprise. One of the things I've taught is that when you love yourself, right? We're trying to fit in, so we're trying to prove ourselves so that other people like us. When we feel those accolades, we feel good. When we feel good, then we're happy, we like ourselves. When we like ourselves already at the beginning, people are attracted to that because people like that energy, that vibration. Now, I always knew this to be true, and I've taught it, but not as much. So what self-love does is it will create that vibration that draws people to you. And here's the second part, which isn't spoken about as much, is that it will push away those that aren't supposed to be there in that moment. Because self-love, when you work through a self-love practice, nobody, let me take it back. Nobody can talk to you on a regular basis worse than you talk to yourself. That does not include the one time the fight, you're attacked, things like that. That happens. But I mean on a regular basis. So when we change our dialogue with ourselves, it forces others to speak to us differently. But that may repel some people away. So my biggest surprise, I'm going through an uncoupling right now, conscious uncoupling with my wife. So I would have guessed that self-love would have brought us closer together. We're both practicing it. We're both doing it. But what it actually did was create space for us to honor each other and move in different directions. I wouldn't have guessed that. But that is a result of the practice, because for each of us, we have to be in our own loving environments. So if that's not what's there, if something is blocking that, the deeper you get into self-love, then the universe goes, hey, no, this can't be the way it is anymore. You got to figure it out one way or the other. Either you get closer or you get further away. In this case, at this point in time, it's further away. Now, when you have a self-love practice in beauty, in love, and not that there aren't difficulties, but it's done in a way that is to not blame or beat up the other person, but to uplift the other person. So that's why we call it, at least I call it this. I didn't make up the term. I forget the woman's name, but she wrote a book. Anyone can Google it. This idea of conscious uncoupling versus divorce. Nothing wrong with divorce, but this idea of consciously going through this process of giving each other the freedom they need to grow. So that's the biggest surprise. Not everyone's going to stay in your world. And some people maybe aren't meant to be there.
And I guess as each of us grows, and as we've talked about earlier, reaching that next level, the person that you're with, it may or may not always fit.
And that word that you use, fit, is such a specific word because it's not supposed to fit. It needs to belong. And here's another thing I teach is a life lived honoring your values is a fulfilling life. A life lived not honoring your values is an unfulfilling life. When we try and fit in, we are changing our values to the values of the group. We are diminishing our own values and going, what's the values of the group? And I'm going to take those on. And of course, when you do that, you feel horrible because they're not your values. Belonging is holding your values strong and secure and keeping them no matter what. But what that means is you might not belong to that group. They may reject you. That sucks and it hurts. And they might accept you. Well, that feels beautiful. So when you practice honoring your values and practice belonging, you got a 50-50 chance of feeling wonderful or horrible that you weren't accepted. But when you try and fit in, even though you're being accepted, you have 100% chance of feeling horrible because you're not honoring your values. And when you don't honor your values, it's just an unfulfilling life. Honoring your values is an act of self-love. You have to do it. And yes, if you're in a relationship and there are different values, you either have to find common ground between them so that the relationship has its own values and you honor those values of the relationship, but you cannot change your values to fit into something. That's going to build up resentment. Another one of the saboteurs, right?
Jonathan, you have so much to share with people. What would be the best way for someone to connect with you?
selfloverevolution.com. Just go to selfloverevolution.com. You can find me in all the other places too. If you're on Facebook, Instagram, it's Jonathan Troen. You'll find me. I'm not that hard a person to find. But if you really want to join this revolution, the self-love revolution, go to selfloverevolution.com, click the button that says join the revolution, and let's all together learn to be our own best friends so that we can help others more powerfully and more deeply in a loving way. Man, if we need anything right now, it's kindness towards other people. And it has to start with kindness towards ourselves.
Well, I will make sure that that is in the show notes so everyone can get in touch with you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.